brushes with death. A watch comes back to life. Feathers appear from nowhere, and unseen hands and voices help us and let us know everything's okay. All this and more on this episode of Real Life Angel Encounters. Angels, we all have them. They're our unseen guides, our companions, our teachers, and they're all around us. Sometimes they make themselves known in the most miraculous ways. Join me, Level 3 QHHT practitioner, angel communicator, and Reiki master, Christy Clemens Hoffman, with stories from real people who have experienced uplifting phenomena and real-life angel encounters. Welcome back to Real Life Angel Encounters. I'm so glad to have you back. I am Christy Clemens Hoffman, your host, and I'm so glad that you're here. On this show, we explore stories of divine guidance, miraculous moments, and messages from the other side. Real life experiences that will inspire, uplift, and expand your awareness. If you enjoy this show, I'd love your support. Be sure to subscribe or follow wherever you're listening right now so you never miss an episode. Next, share this podcast with friends and loved ones who would love a little angelic inspiration. And if you have a moment, leave a rating and review. It helps more than you can know. And if you feel called to support the work that we're doing, you can make a donation at radiatewellnesscommunity.com/Real Life Angel Encounters podcast. Every contribution helps us to continue bringing these incredible stories to life. Thank you for listening, and welcome to the community of those who know that angels are real. First on the podcast, we have Will, who has several stories of being a true child of the 80s, poorly supervised and left to his own devices, and experiencing several brushes with death. Next up, I've got Will here, who is a podcaster in his own right with Dark Fringe Radio at darkfringeradio.com. Hi, Will. How are you today?
Good evening, Christy. How are you?
I'm swell. It's good to see you.
Good to see you again.
Thank you. Thank you. You've got some interesting stories to tell. Can you share what happened?
Yeah, obviously we're talking about angels and spirit guides and things of that nature. So personally, when I was younger, about 5 years old, I had my first near-death experience at 5. I don't remember much of the incident itself because I was so young, obviously. I'm 45 now, so it's literally been 40 years since it's happened. So it's kind of hard to dust off the details of what happened back then. But long story short, I was 5 years old. I was not supervised properly. And we're talking about the early 80s. I was born in the late 70s, so things were different back then. You know what I mean? You kind of let your kid kind of latchkey and go, and that's how it was
Come home
back
when
then.
the street lights come on.
Exactly, exactly. So it's a different type of mentality than it is now. We're so much more on top of our children as far as what they're doing on a daily basis in minutes. But back then it was not like that. And so, long story short, we lived in a third-story house in Connecticut at that point, and we lived on the third story of that house. I managed to get outside the window and fall out the window to the first floor ledge from the third floor. Not a scratch on me.
Really?
Not a scratch on me. I was taken to the hospital directly right away. For all intents and purposes, I probably shouldn't have even survived something like that at that age. That was definitely something out of my control. And there were definitely angels or an angel that was definitely watching over me at that point. And again, I don't remember a lot of the actual incident itself. I was told this is exactly what happened. I was unscathed. There's no reason for me not to have had not any injuries from that fall like that.
Yeah, because that's, what, a good 100 feet?
Yeah, and we're talking about in the wintertime as well. So we're talking about the dead of winter in Connecticut. And so maybe it was the snow that helped break the fall. I don't know. But I can tell you this, there was something that was definitely watching over me during that time, basically scathed any type of get away unscathed from this entire event. Even my mom, God bless her, she's passed away a few years now, but she's always told me that there was always somebody watching over me. And I've had multiple events. This is just the first NDE. I've had multiple NDEs. We'll go into the second one in a minute, but my mother always told me there was somebody watching over me because again, something like that happening to somebody at that age, that's usually a kiss of death if you fall out the window. You know what I mean?
Oh
So
my
Yeah, and so long story short, everything was fine, unscathed. I walked away from it like nothing. They took me to the hospital just to check over me. Doctors was like, "Yeah, no, he's fine. There's nothing wrong with him." Fast forward a couple years later, my second NDE at 7 years old,
Hmm.
I was riding in a van with my dad at the time, and mid '80s, seatbelts really weren't a thing.
I mean, it sounds like our
It
parents didn't
was
really care if we lived or
no, I know. It
no, it just
sounds
wasn't
like
a
that.
thing. We just
It, but
didn't
it,
know.
we just didn't know. We were just so, yeah. Everything was so new to us. Back then in the mid '80s, again, like I said, seatbelts really weren't a thing. But I got into the van. We stopped at a convenience store. I remember this whole thing very vividly to this day. We stopped at a convenience store, got something, came back into the car. I got into the car and I thought I closed the door all the way.
Oh no.
But since we're talking about, the '80s, these cars were made out of, steel, and you know what I mean? A lot of times you couldn't tell if a door was closed properly all the way, unless maybe you put some weight on it or something. You know what I mean? You're like, oh, dang, the door's open, right? We go back into the car and then we just take off. End up going down this one road that's pretty close to where I live now. Matter of fact, it's really weird. And we were doing about 40, 45 miles an hour. And next thing I put my arm on the ledge of the door, just to kind of prop my arm on there. And next thing I knew, my arm went like this and went like that. And I went flying out the
Oh
door, basically.
God.
Now, I remember falling, hitting the pavement, and then blacking out. That's all I remember from that moment. After all that, it was like I was in a dark room with a lot of voices. That's what I heard constantly. Voices, 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 voices. I couldn't make out what they were saying, but that's all I heard. So as I'm laying on the concrete, my dad pulls over finally. Oddly enough, 3 cars behind us was an ambulance
Oh,
that just finished dropping off a patient at the hospital.
you can't make this up.
Can't make this up. Can't make it up. So literally 3 cars behind ours, where I just literally fell out to the side of the road, was an ambulance already there.
Oh my God.
So again, walked away unscathed. A few bumps and bruises, nothing more than that. No
No.
broken bones, no concussion. They kept me in the hospital for just a few days just to make sure because they were like, this is crazy. How did this kid? And even the ambulance people said that they saw me fall out of the car, which freaked them out, right? And so I spent about 2 or 3 days in the hospital. I remember as a kid just being there and like kind of hanging out with some of the other kids that were in the hospital, which was kind of cool. But yeah, again, the angels were there for me.
Oh my goodness. This
The
kind
angel.
of reminds me of a story when I was in high school. I was babysitting these two brothers after school. It was just a couple of hours until their mom got home. And so
Hmm.
I was picking them up from school. And I had an old Dodge Dart Swinger,
Ah.
affectionately named Hector. Was his name. And again, this was in the 80s, the early
Yep.
80s, because I was still in high school. Nobody wore seatbelts then. And so
Right.
the boys got in the front seat, the bench seat beside me, pulled the door closed. I turned left to get on this main street to take them to their house. The door
Hmm.
flies open, and the littlest one flew out on this busy street. I
Hmm.
slam the brakes, put it in park, and hop out the car and get to the other side, and he's gone.
Mm.
Thought, oh my God, where did he go? He
Yeah.
got up and gotten back in the car.
Wow.
He was
Wow.
fine.
Like
But
nothing happened.
no,
That's wild.
isn't
Yeah.
that crazy?
Yeah.
So
That's what I'm
now,
saying.
in
That's why I'm saying there's divine
hindsight,
intervention in that. There has to
yeah,
be.
right, there has to be. There has to
Right.
be. Well, in
Yeah.
hindsight, I'm thinking maybe I should have taken him to the hospital or something
Just to check up.
just to
Right.
check up.
Yeah, yeah, you never know. Things happen later on after, right? It's one of those situations where like you wonder, like, okay, you're scared. I'm assuming my parents were afraid of, scared of what happened, obviously. But then again, to come out of this unscathed,
That's amazing.
literally 2 years later after the first incident, and then now this happens both times with my dad.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Subsequently, my mom and dad divorced right after that.
Oh
So
my
yeah,
gosh.
yeah. So I think that was kind of like the breaking point of what
Oh,
happened. But yeah, it's always been something weird like that with me. I've escaped so many scenarios, Christy. I mean, even later on in life. I mean, I've had head-on accidents with no seatbelt on, walk away from it with a truck, and I have a car. So you know what I mean? It's just like
yeah.
that's happened to me. There's been situations where, when I got older, mid to, early 20s, I had situations where I avoided, and just because I just listened to my gut instinct.
Mhm.
And that gut instinct to me is your angel talking to you.
Right.
That's what I really feel like what it is. I mean, I don't know how else to kind of, put it together, but that's how I explain it. You know what I mean? That gut instinct, when you have that thing right before you do something and it goes, you
Yeah.
might not want to do that. You might want to go this way instead of you going that way. That's the angels talking to you through your gut, through instinct. So there's been situations like, I was highly successful as a mortgage broker at the young age of 24. I was making, six figures at that age, which was crazy. You know what I mean? I was making more money than my parents were. And I was invited to certain gatherings, let's just say, you know what I mean, of people that were in the business, but we're also into a lot of other things too, nefarious things such as drugs and a lot of drugs, things of that nature. And so I was invited once to an event. I decided to go. It was in Miami Beach. And I recall this incident very clearly because I knew I dodged a bullet. But as I get to this place, it was at a hotel in Miami Beach, and it was at the top floor of the penthouse. So this was a lot of people there. Big wigs were there as well, people there. But as soon as I got there, I had this strange feeling like, nah, this is not your jam, dude. You need to get out of here. And the next thing I know, I see a big tray of cocaine come out, right?
Oh my
Right?
gosh.
Like literally a tray like this big and just full of
Wow.
mountain cocaine, right? And I'm just like, okay, I think this is time for me to go.
Yeah.
This is another, a sign saying, okay, listen, here are the warning signs. Here they are. Red, 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 red.
This is not for
And
you,
so
friend.
no, it's not for me. And I knew it wasn't for me. And so I decided to leave. I left. I was there for maybe a total of maybe 10, 15 minutes. I said hi to a couple people. And next thing I knew, I was like, you know what? Nah, I'm done. And funny enough, this is what happened later on. Funny enough, I get a phone call around midnight from one of my friends that went to that party. And he's like, did you hear what happened? I'm like, no. He goes, somebody came up and shot up the whole place. Four people got shot.
No.
Yeah, he goes. It turned into a whole big thing. It turned into a robbery gone wrong, and next you know, there was four people that were dead, many other people that were shot. So if I didn't leave, quite possibly that could have been me, quite possibly. And so I was like, I hung up with my friend after I was like, you know what? I thank God, the universe, everybody. I was like, you know what? Thank you for taking me out of that situation. I did not want to be in that situation. I knew something was wrong. I knew again that gut instinct kicked in and said, "Hey, listen, Will, you know what? Let's get out of here. This is not going to end well." Funny enough, this runs in my family. You know what I mean?
Really?
My mom was very intuitive that way, even though
Hmm.
she would like to like not talk about it as much
Hmm.
because she was highly religious, and she jumped around from a lot of different religions. Especially me growing up, I was introduced to so many different religions, and so it was kind of hard for her to kind of talk about it because of her beliefs, but nonetheless, I know she's had it because she's told me multiple stories as well of the same type of manner where she just assigns saying no, don't do this or go this way or go that way, and you know what? She finds out later that she made the right choice. So again, it runs in the family, and I hope it runs in the family because I think it's a good defense mechanism, a good thing to have. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
Especially if you fine tune it as well, and you really learn how to listen to it in a more intuitively.
Right. It's like a muscle. The more you use it and the more you trust it, the better it gets and
Mhm.
the stronger that it grows.
Oh yeah. And this happened to me, like I said, this happens to me all the time. I was out recently with my wife. This wasn't recently, this was about a year ago. And we ended up going on a date. So we ended up going downtown to go have some drinks. We Uber there and Uber back. So we were responsible. We didn't have to worry about driving. We can drink as much as we want and not have to worry about it, right?
Mhm.
So we go down there, we have a good time, and then towards the later part of the evening, we're walking downtown, and then all of a sudden, this gentleman walks by me. I have no clue who he is. From Adam, I don't know. He comes up to me with his look in his face, like almost like evil, and growls at me. And growls at me. And I didn't even know how to approach this because I was like, what is going on here? Like, I'm over there having a good time. And next thing you know, this guy comes up to me and starts growling at me. And you know what? Next thing I know, my wife pulls me. She's like, "Nope," right?
Nope.
And she's like, "Nope, not today, not
No.
today. It's
Mm-mm.
not worth it. Not today." I wasn't even going there mentally yet. I wasn't even there at that moment mentally. But she kind of already knew. I'm very, defensive of my people that I love in my life.
Mhm.
So if I
Yeah.
see something happening, I'm gonna jump right in. So nonetheless, I mean, he growled at me, and then next thing you know, she pulls me away. She's like, "Nope," and then literally like maybe a minute later, he ends up getting to a fight with somebody behind me. And next thing you know, I mean, they're like literally throwing each other through plate glass windows.
Oh my
Yeah. And I'm like, wow, that could have been me right there too.
God.
That could have been me right there too, you know? So
Gee.
yeah, there's a bunch of times, Christy. I mean,
Wow.
there's so many times where I'm just like, okay, I got to listen more often because this is going to serve me well. But yeah, these are a few examples of, the things that happened to me in my life that makes me a believer in these things because there's no other explanation for it.
There's not. No,
No.
no.
Mm-mm.
No, you said that you kind of share this trait with your mom.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering about your kids. Do they show any signs of this?
I kind of see it a little bit in my son, but I see it more in my daughter. She's more the intuitive, I find. My son is a little bit of a chicken. When we start talking about things like this, he's like, oh, no, no, I don't want to talk about that. You know what I mean? So he gets kind of like weirded out by it, but my daughter, completely open to it. I've seen traits of that in her. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah, it is. It is because it really feels like you're connected to in a different way, as well.
Hmm. Wonderful.
Yeah.
These stories are great. Well, and I'm really glad that you listened to this inner voice. It's easy to miss it. It's easy to miss it and dismiss it,
Oh,
right?
absolutely.
It's being crazy. This is fine. There are people that I like at the party. There are people I know here. It's going to be fine.
Right.
So it's easy to let those things slide, and I'm glad you don't.
Yeah, yeah, no, and like I said, it runs in the family. My aunt has it too. There's been a couple situations where my aunt. There's a story real quick. My
Yeah.
aunt, my mom, my stepdad, and her husband, and another couple ended up going to this party that was like down the street from our house. That a couple that we knew that lived down the street was throwing. So at that point, it was not for kids. So I stayed home with my brother. We ended up just playing video games all night, but they ended up walking over to the party. It was an adult party.
Mhm.
And my aunt recalls saying that, hey, when she got there to the party, she started looking at everybody's face, and everybody's face had like a red paint on their face, like that. And she was like, she started getting really weirded out about it. She's like, every person that I see here has this like red mark on their face. I'm like, I don't understand what's going on. So, long story short, they didn't stay too long. They stayed maybe a couple hours. They didn't stay too late. I think they were home by 11.
Mhm.
And next thing you know, the next day, somebody came into the party and shot up the whole place. Yeah,
Oh
yeah,
no.
yeah. So that red mark she was saying that it was blood. And that's why she said that she felt like she had to get out of there. And she's like, I don't understand what's going on there. So again, this runs in the family. I'm happy that I have this, whatever gift that it is, or just being intuitive to listening to myself. I think it's very important. I think it's important for everybody to be able to do that. A lot of people don't put a lot of energy into it.
Yeah,
You
they
know
don't
what I
put
mean?
the puts in it. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. They always talk about, oh, you got to do the right thing, make the right choices. Yes, of course, you got to do that. But you also have to learn how to listen to, the things that are talking to you too, that may not be physically in front of you.
absolutely. Well, if something doesn't feel right, you need to trust that,
Yeah,
right?
100%.
You need to act
100%.
on it.
Hmm.
Oh, these are great stories. Well, thank you so much for sharing them with me
No
today.
problem. Anytime.
Thank you. The next three stories were told live at a book signing and story sharing event at Tunsol Books in downtown Kansas City. So, as any live event, there's going to be some ambient background noise, lots of traffic, chairs scooting around, people shuffling. And I don't think any of this diminishes from the content of the story. So, I think you will enjoy these. First up is Melissa, who's been a longtime client of mine, and she enjoys hearing from her loved ones and her angels often. And she's got some remarkable stories from her deceased husband.
First off, I'll say the significance of this right here, this angel
The
feather.
tattoo.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And you and I know what feathers, how significant they are to us. And this is a scripture about angels, for he shall command his angels to guard over you in all of your ways. Well, my husband never really believed in angels or thought too much about that. He had an appreciation for what I thought, but he didn't really get too into that. And then over the years of him hanging out with me and exposure to that, he had kind of changed his mind. And he did start to believe, and he did have significant thoughts about that. But after he died, I had this done because of that, because he and I did both then believe the same way that we are surrounded by angels all the time. And they're there, even though we aren't always aware that they're there. We don't see them. We might sense them. But that is why I had that done. And I think about it a lot. And I never found feathers before he was gone, ever. Never in my life did I. And since he's been gone almost 4 years, I have found a significant amount in many, many different detailed situations. But I'll tell you what happened just the other day. And on the way in here, I told Carl, I said, remind me to tell you later about the watch. Well, this watch, he had bought me years and years ago. It is not an expensive watch. There's nothing that's significant about it other than I liked it. And I wore it for years and years. Well, we had moved several times in the last, I guess, maybe 5 years. And this watch had gotten packed away. And I forgot where it was. And I had thought about it several times and thought, I want to find it because I love it and I want to wear it. I found it, I don't know, probably 2 months ago. And when I took it out, I was real happy that I had found it, but it didn't work. It wasn't working. And it is the type of watch that is activated by your movement. So I wore it for a couple of days trying to get it to work. And I was real disappointed. I was happy I'd found it, but I was very disappointed that it didn't work. And so I put it in the side pocket of my purse and I carried it with me because I thought when I come across a good watch repair person, I will have it with me and I'll just drop it off and see if they can fix it. Well, a friend of mine, she told me of a place to take it. And I went in there and the man said, I'm sorry. He said, I don't repair watches. I only repair clocks. He said, but there is a man that does. And it's right across the parking lot, right over there. And I thought, great. So I left his shop. I went directly across the street. And this was just last week. And I pulled across the street, pulled my car in. I was getting out of my car. I opened my car door and I went to get out. And I am not kidding you. And I have a picture of this. Right at my foot where I was getting ready to step out of the car was a feather that looks just like this. And I have a picture of it because I laid the feather here and I took a picture of it so that wherever I was, I could show it to someone if they wanted to believe it. But I was kind of humored by it. And I even said out loud, I said, oh, LB, because that's what I always called him. I picked it up, picked the feather up, lifted up the console of my car, and I put it there because I didn't want to lose it. Thought, okay, I get it, but nobody else is probably going to care much. I got out of my car, went into the watch repair place, and I said to the man, I have a watch I need to have repaired. And he took hold of me. He goes, oh, that's pretty. And he said, it's an incline. I said, no, it's not valuable or anything, but I told him the story of how I had gotten it, this and that. And I just took it out of my purse. I didn't even look at it, and I handed it to him, and he held it, and he's about the age of my son. So he was a younger guy. And he held it in his hand just like this. And he goes, well, ma'am, this watch is working. And I said, no way. I said, I wore it a couple of days trying to activate it, get it to work and everything. And I said, they just wouldn't. And I really did mess with it. I mean, I walked around my house, shaking it, doing all kinds of stuff. It would not work. But he said, I'd love to repair that watch for you, but ma'am, it's working. And I said, well, thank you. And he said, well, if it stops and it won't keep accurate time, bring it back into me and I will fix it. And so I took my watch back. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. You cannot make this stuff. And I took it. I went back out, got in my car, and I sat there for a minute. And I took that feather out of the console and I looked at it and I put it back in there. And I've been wearing it now every day for the last, I don't know, week and a half or so. And it's working just fine. Now it is activated by movement, and you can gather your own earthly logic if you want to, because I did. And I thought, well, you know what? I've been carrying it around in my purse for, I don't know, a month or so. And probably just the activity of my purse activated it or something. But I don't really believe that. I don't really. I mean, our worldly logic, but that is not really what I believe. I believe that he set this watch in motion for me, and he wanted me to see that feather just because he wanted me to know I'm around. And I think that he's able to do that because he started believing before he left here. If he hadn't started believing before he left here, I don't think that he would have the energy or the capacity to be able to come back to me and do these signs. And he had had an accident. We used to spend most of the year at the Lake of the Ozarks. And this was before he really had said, honey, I kind of get it now. I kind of believe what you always tell me. And were out shopping, and there was a chain guard across the window. And he always laughed and said he was trying to keep up with me because I'm just around, and he was following me up to this window. Well, he caught his toe on the chain, the wire, and it catapulted him into this side of this building. Well, it was a terrible accident because it catapulted him and he didn't even have time to put his hands down. He landed and it was bad. I've got pictures of that too. And his nose should have just been shattered. And it was a mess. I took him straight to the emergency room and we got him all fixed up. And the emergency room doctor said, you should really be hurt worse than you are. You don't have a concussion. Your nose should be shattered. And he said, and it's not, but you're lucky. He said, you're just lucky. And later, after he kind of healed up within a couple of weeks, he said to me, I know you're going to think this sounds funny. He said, but I think something caught me. He said, I still have memory of how I fell and how I got catapulted into the side of that building and how I didn't even have time to put my hands. I mean, it was like he got dropped off of a 3-story building, And he said, I have memory of that. And I should have been hurt really, really bad. And the doctor had even said, he goes, when I first saw you, I really thought, here's a guy that's going to need nasal surgery and nothing. I mean, I had him okay within a few days, but he believed, and he told me he would not have probably shared that with anybody else because he wasn't that type of person. But he said, I think something caught. He said, and I'm thinking that maybe it's like what you have been telling me, that one of my angels broke my fall. And he said, I got hurt, but I didn't get hurt nearly as bad as I should have. But I don't know. I have a lot of things like that happen. Lots of stories like that. But those are just 2 more recent, profound stories. I'm a believer. Yeah. Those are great stories.
If you recognize the voice of this next storyteller, you will know that she told several remarkable stories on the first season of Real Life Angel Encounters. Becky is back to tell even more stories of her miracles and visits from loved ones.
I don't know if I talked about this on the first podcast, but when you mentioned me telling something tonight, I thought I do want to tell this one because it's the very first visit that I had. And we haven't met before, but throughout my youth, I was always searching for a relationship with God. I've been to cajillion churches, just going to find the right one where I clicked and me and God can be BFF for the rest of my life. And I found myself when I was 19 and I was a young mother, young wife, and I had a new friend and she had a new boyfriend. And I was attending this evangelical church with her on the weekends. And every week I would leave the service just simply devastated. I mean, it was a 6 Kleenex sermon for me. I was full of my nose. I was crying. I was so unworthy. And Lord, just give me another week to be good enough for you, Jesus. And every week this preacher would break me down and make me just feel worthless. And I'm going to try again next week. I'll be back. We'll see if I make it. And this one particular Friday night, I had not a dream. I'm certain that it was a visitation. In this vision, I found myself looking at myself. This had never happened to me before. I'd had the naked at school dream and other types of anxiety dreams in my youth, but I had not had anything like this happen to me before. But I was looking at myself and I was on the floor. If you are familiar with yoga child's pose, I had my hands drawn in and I could tell from the motion of my body that I was crying. Realized soon I was seeing myself crying down here. And I was illuminated. And I began to just wonder, like, what is this light? And then the next thing I know, I'm back in me and I'm beginning to raise. And I can see that ahead of me is a figure that's illuminating. The light from this figure is illuminating me. This is the light. It wasn't even a room. It was just like an abyss. It was just darkness, but I was lit. And I could see that this long gown was there. And I was raising myself. And then I could see that this person's hands, it was like they were a marionette and I was on strings. As they raised their hands, my head was turning, kind of at the same. And without the sound of a voice, I heard the message in my head. You're already good enough. Stop crying. You're already good enough. And at that moment, I had stopped crying as I was instructed. And I was feeling this love and this light. And just as I reached about here, never saw the face, I was bolted awake in my bed, sitting straight up, perfect posture, sitting in my bed, looked around the room, and there was husband sleeping over here. My baby was quiet. And I just sat there for a second and soaked this in and tried to process it until I knew the message was, it was Jesus. And I didn't need to go back to this church anymore. I was already good enough. And I did not stop my search for the perfect religion. I went on another probably 5 years before I decided that I just didn't need that. That was the connection. And so that was really my first experience. I didn't talk about it for 20 more years. I didn't want anyone to try and talk me out of what I knew inside. And so that was it. That was like my very first experience.
Good story. Valid experience.
Can I tell you a fun one?
Please tell them fun one.
Okay, this is a fun one. In 2010, we lost a young man who was very dear to our family. He was older than our oldest child. He worked for my husband. He was like a friend and a son and a brother, kind of all in one. And we were very, very close. And he died unexpectedly in a car accident. And his mother had reached out to us in about November. She said, I always buy all of my children a Yankee candle for their home. And I have Jeremy's Yankee candle. And could I give it to your family? I know he was special to you. And it's the only thing that makes sense. I said, sure, we'll take it. That's awesome. Thank you so much. So we decided that that candle would be lit every year at Christmas, just to remember Jeremy. We have a big family thing on Christmas. We wanted to remember. We're going to like that every year. So we lit it over the Christmas holidays. And Christmas morning came, we'd had a huge snow that Christmas. And so in the morning, I drove my mother and my great aunt back to Harrisonville. My husband had gone off back to his black powder hunting. That's his vacation. Like I said, we do all of our celebration on Christmas Eve. And so he was gone. This was strange for me. My children all had their own homes. I was home alone for Christmas Day. It was cozy and it was getting on time for me to go to bed. And I closed down the kitchen and I walked past Jeremy's candle and I blew it out. And I said, Merry Christmas, Jeremy, headed down the hall to my bedroom. And as I passed the toy room where my grandchildren play, I hear, hi, it's me, mailbox. I'm the only one home. And there's a Blues Clues book that my grandchildren have with the little buttons down the side and you push them and each character in the book has something to say. And I said, Jeremy, is that you? And I heard, hi, it's me, mailbox. Hi, it's me, mailbox. And I said, well, that's cool. And that'll be all. Don't do it. He closed the door, went to bed. The next morning I got up and that was the first thing on my mind. I said, I'm going to go in that room and I'm going to find what's laying on that book. Something laid on that book, right?
That's logic.
Yep. And I go in the room and there is that book laying on the bookshelf. There's nothing near it. It's just lying flat.
I believe it.
On the shelf.
Yeah.
And it was Jeremy. Hi, it's me, mailbox.
That's
and it's his humor and it was everything. And it was good to hear from him and it soothed me, to know that.
And what the fun. Again, our loved ones can manipulate energy like that. And lastly, I think you'll recognize James. James had told these stories on Real Life Angel Encounters in the current season, but I think they bear repeating.
The first story, when I was a child, I would have been 5 or 6. So backstory, I'm from Florida. So there's a flea market when I was a kid. And it kind of had different, I don't know if there's an equivalent out here, but it was all like outdoor stalls in like a overhang.
I love that.
Kind of thing. So it wasn't indoors, but it was like had a roof over it. but it was all outdoors, which in hindsight was kind of awful because it was really hot all the time. But anyway, but crisscrossing through it, there were like main streets. They had like kind of like cross, like where cars were kind of coming in and out of. That's sort of the setting the stage. So I was 5 or 6. My little sister, who had since with the angels herself, she passed in 2020, but she was mentally handicapped. So her entire life, she was nonverbal mostly. She learned some fun words later in life. She's a lot smarter than she let on. And that's a whole other bit, I guess. So she couldn't have been more than 3, which was what puts me at 6. Because we were 3 years apart. But she was nonverbal, she didn't speak. She had epilepsy, among many other things. She had a disease called tuberous sclerosis complex, which basically gives a genetic disease. You get tumors everywhere in your body. My mom has it in her kidneys, passed it on to a sister who had it in her brain, heart, lungs, eyes, and that's it. The brain ones are the problem. That's what caused the epilepsy. And she passed with the flu. So go figure anything, really, I guess. Anyways, so she was in a stroller and she had gotten out of that stroller and just beelined. And my parents and I were looking over at one of the stalls. There could have been anything. There were a lot of stores there. By the time we didn't realize she had gotten out till we turned to the stroller and she was gone. And of course, we were by one of those like main roads passing through. So immediate freak out, obviously, because did she run into traffic? Did she get abducted? The Hudson, which is not a great town in Florida. Any number of things could have happened. So we're frantic. We're trying to figure it out, kind of panic there. And through one of those side streets. And as a kid, I remember that there's bright light behind it, but depending what that could have been anything. But a man walked over holding her hand. And he walks over and he says to my parents, I as well, here's Elizabeth, said her name, which is relevant. And of course, in the moment, it was just like, oh my gosh, thank you so much. It's here, whatever. Put her back in the stroller. By the time we turned to thank the man, to like, whatever, that was gone. So spooky on 2 accounts. One, because as a stranger, most people would at least always stick around and say, are you okay? Something I can do, whatever. But also said her name, which I thought was really odd. I mean, she had one of those like medical bracelets, but to my recollection, didn't have her name on it. It just said basically like, it just was like a epilepsy. It was a very simple band. And she was nonverbal. It's not like she could have said like, hi, I'm Elizabeth. So that was kind of spooky there.
That's not me.
So yeah.
I didn't know her name.
That was the big thing. And so that was any number of things. Other people, cars coming by, like that could have ended a lot of really bad ways. She was actually doing that a lot now that I'm thinking about it. That's the only like angel-y kind of story. She had gotten out of the house once. She had slipped through a crack in the window and kind of ran to a lake nearby.
Oh, no.
And walked into someone's house and they weren't normally home, but happened to be home that day. And so they called the police. And of course, at that point, we were like, hey, our kid's missing. And so she was kind of doing that a lot. She's very strong-willed. That's the first story, I guess.
Good one. I believe it.
Thank you. Second story is much later. This is 2016, 2014, a while ago, a long time ago. I was in college and I had just gone through a really bad breakup and I was not really at a great place in my life. So I was working at Chick-fil-A at the time and I kind of decided, I was not in a good place. I'm like, tonight's the night, I'm going to go kill myself. There's a bridge near where I work. I'm like, gonna drive off the bridge, call it a life. I was not in a good place. I'm not saying it's right. That's what it is. But before I went, I kind of had it in my head, and this is actually in a poem in my book, actually. I kind of chronicled it in there, which I should do for the first story now that I'm thinking about it. We talked about that.
Oh, we did.
But before I wanted to go, I just wanted to have a bottle of Dr. Pepper. I love Dr. Pepper. It's my favorite drink. And so, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to swing by Walmart. I'm going to go to Walmart nearby. I'm going to get a bottle of Dr. Pepper. I'm going to chug it. I'm going to call it a night. We're going to call it a night. Call it a life. So I go in, I buy the bottle of Dr. Pepper. It's the name of the poem. And I'm walking out of the store to my car, and there's a guy in an SUV, this trunk propped open. And I'm walking home, and I'm just kind of beelining. I definitely look like I'm not in a good mood. And he just calls over like, hey, man, how's it going? Just like, kind of wave. I'm like, okay. And he kind of looks over, just talking. He's just like, don't wave. And I was kind of a jerk to him at first, because obviously, so I'm just kind of like, hey, man. And he's like, come on, like, you already all right? You having a good night? You having a bad night? Like, you want to talk? And I kind of thought it was like, this dude just probably wants money, whatever. He's living in his car or something. But I'm like, you know what? Disregard it. I don't know if we can curse on this. And I'm like, whatever. You know what? If this dude wants my money, I don't need it. What am I going to do with it? So I walk over. Dude never asked me for money. Doesn't know his name is Tommy. But we're just kind of chatting. And he had this joyful look. Like, you ever meet those people that are just like, not in like an exuberant, manic way, just in a peaceful, like, this guy has got it all together. He probably did. But like, just this very joyful but peaceful manner. It's hard to describe. But he's like, oh, man, I'm like, yeah, man, like, I'm not, even going well. I don't really want to talk about it. Like, I'm not like giving him any like details, but he's like, oh, no, like the man. And he's just kind of reiterated to me, he's like, I am so blessed. And he's telling me about his wife, who is in the back of the car, or he points out. She never says a word. She just kind of like put it kind of away. But he's telling me about how he's been through a lot. And because he obviously, after acknowledging that I didn't want to talk about what's going on in my life, you see it's something going on in his. But he's telling me about how he was kind of a rough spot, but he and his wife got through it together, and like they're all they have, but they're all they need. Like love makes the world go round. That kind of very positive love-based message, which of course I needed to hear from the aforementioned breakups. But he was very peaceful and just really kind of quite literally talked me off the ledge there, unknowingly, because I didn't tell him that. And he never asked for money. He never was like, hey, well, didn't. No soliciting, nothing like that. He was just very peaceful, very assurance, put his hand on my shoulder with like, hey, things going to work out, man. Just have faith, trust and love, that kind of thing. And that gave me enough. Then he started a new job, which that was insane. And that was like a factory. Yeah, just enough details to kind of give me a story, I guess. But after talking to him, I had just enough peace and joy in my heart just to make it home. And I thanked him for that. I said, thank you, man. I really needed this tonight.
Thank you for listening. Please subscribe and follow, and be sure to share this episode. The more people who know about this podcast, the more great story submissions we get. Have a story to share? Email your own real-life angel encounter to angelencounterspodcast@gmail.com or visit radiatewellnesscommunity.com/real-life angel encounters podcast. Or join our Facebook group and continue the discussion. Want to know what your angels and loved ones have to tell you? Schedule an appointment with me at radiatewellnesscommunity.com. A special thanks to James Wheeler for the original music and to Tiffany Baumgarten for the logo design.